My name's Nick and I learned to speak Spanish because I was dating an Argentinian girl who spoke zero English. It took me about 6 months to be fluid and comfortable in conversation with her. We had conversations before that as well, but I would not call them fluid. I'd always been curious about Spanish, but I never got serious with it until I met her. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you the most important thing that I learned in that time period, which was, you saw it in the thumbnail, nobody can teach you Spanish. Let me be precise about what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Spanish teachers can't help you along your journey. I'm definitely not saying people who make Spanish content online are wasting your time. I am saying that Spanish is not something that you can be sat down at a desk and taught in the traditional sense. This is Juan. Juan teaches Spanish on YouTube and I've watched tons of his videos. He also is a real life in-person Spanish professor, and he said something on his podcast that was very interesting to me. He basically said he could always tell which students were going to succeed and which weren't going to succeed in language learning based on the question they asked when they came to his classroom. Students who asked Juan, "Can you help me learn Spanish?" would more often than not succeed, but students who asked Juan, "Can you teach me Spanish?" would often fail. Now, what does Juan mean and what do I mean? Let's do a quick thought experiment. I'm going to play a clip of a normal native Spanish speaker speaking.
Tienes que probarlo. Esto es estilo japonés tal cual. Al parecer esto en Japón es muy habitual. Una lata de postre. O sea, esto es muy raro, pero es como si fuera una Coca-Cola, pero en vez de una Coca-Cola, pues es una lata con un postre.
My question is, even if you could individually translate every single one of those words in that clip, do you think you could understand that clip in real time? I bet that even if you knew the individual translations of every word you just heard in that clip, you still wouldn't be able to understand it, just because of how fast native speakers speak their own language. Understanding native level Spanish spoken in real time is not a question of how many words you can translate. It's not a question of how many grammar rules you know. There is no checklist of facts that you can know about a language that, once completed, allows you to understand native speakers speaking to you normally. This makes learning languages completely different than something like learning capitals in your history class, for instance. In history class, you can learn your 50 states, you can use flashcards, and eventually you'll be able to recite all 50. Or in math class, you learn formulas. It's the same idea. You learn long division. If I give you two big numbers, you can always divide them. It's the same every time. A teacher can sit you down and teach you all the capitals. A teacher can sit you down and teach you long division. But a teacher cannot sit you down and give you a list of facts that's going to make you able to speak naturally with native Spanish speakers. Imagine if knowing your capitals meant being able to recite them in seconds without pause in any order at any time. Or imagine if long division meant I give you any two numbers and you immediately on the spot can tell me what they divide into, without pen and paper, without even a second of thought in your head. That would be more like language learning, except there'd be thousands of formulas and tens and thousands of capitals. Spanish and languages in general are huge. They're complex, they're messy, they're spoken fast. There's tens of thousands of words and there's endless variations. And when you're having real conversations, you don't have time to think about any of it. So understanding and producing the language has to happen automatically. It has to happen at a level that's below the conscious mind, in a way that simply knowing how to translate from Spanish to English just doesn't provide. So then the question becomes, how do you get to that level of understanding? From taking in massive amounts of authentic input in Spanish at a level you understand. Not just listening to one video, not just listening to two videos, but listening to so much Spanish that your brain stops thinking about the language and starts processing it as if it was your own native language. And that's something that nobody can teach you. Nobody can take hundreds of hours of Spanish and jam it into your brain. It's something you have to do personally. It's what you already did in your native language. Before you ever went to a classroom and learned about grammar or learned about English as a subject, you were already highly fluent in the language. You were already talking to your parents. You were already talking to your friends. Learning English as a subject probably helped sharpen you. It probably helped you understand certain things. But this was all after you already reached a high level of fluency in your native language. What this means for you is it's not necessary to have a conscious understanding of every grammar rule from Spanish. You don't need one-to-one translations with every English and Spanish word. You don't need any of that to be able to understand and speak Spanish fluently. If I said to you in English, "I go to the store yesterday," and then I say, "I went to the store yesterday," immediately you hear one of those sounds wrong and one sounds correct. If I said, "I am more smarter than him," And then I said, I'm much smarter than him. Again, you just hear implicitly something's wrong there. And you probably won't be able to tell me the actual grammar rule that I've broken, but you just know in the deepness of your heart that something is incorrect. That's because you've acquired English, you've internalized the grammar. So to know if something's right or wrong, you don't have to consult a big dictionary of rules in your head, you just know. No teacher taught you that, no teacher could teach you that, and it's the same in your second language. To bring a bit of my own personal story into this, when I started language learning, I started the traditional way. I made a bunch of flashcards to understand direct and indirect object pronouns in Spanish. I used the verb dar, which means to give. So on flashcards, I would write down me lo diste, te lo di. And I would write down all of these variations and try to memorize them over and over and over again every day. And there's a ton of these. It's not just like you learn a few and then you're done. There's probably hundreds of variations. There's the conjugation of the verb. Who's giving what to who? Is it one thing being given? Is it multiple things being given? What's the gender of the thing being given? After studying these phrases on flashcards for an hour a day for 2 weeks, I realized that when I was hearing these phrases in actual content and actual conversation, I wasn't automatically registering them and understanding them instantly like I thought I might be. Instead, when I heard the phrase, I would try to translate in my head and figure out what it meant the same way I would do when I would see them on flashcards. And when I would add this conscious translation step, I would just be missing all of the conversation, all of the content I was watching. All of that would just go whizzing by while I was stuck in my head trying to figure out, okay, what's this conjugation? Who's doing what to who? And if I wanted to use these phrases in conversation, I had to kind of construct them in my head before they came out. It wasn't fluid and it wasn't natural. When I switched to more input-based learning, that's when I was able to hear them and instantly know what they meant. And I don't mean that happened overnight. It happened over a long period of time. But I realized I was training a different kind of muscle. It wasn't me studying the language and trying to conjugate on the fly. It was me hearing these types of phrases so often that eventually they just became instant. And again, this happened over a long period of time. It wasn't like I just went from not understanding them to understanding them. It was hundreds and hundreds of hours of input. Even today, I wouldn't say that I'm totally 100% comfortable with every single variation of those phrases. But when you're doing input-based learning, it becomes less important. There's always context. There's always patterns. You'll always find the meaning over time. And that's what acquisition is. It's not focusing on individual words, it's taking in the meaning as it comes. Finally, why do I think this is so important? It's because I've heard too many people say, oh, well, I'll learn Spanish, but first I have to buy a course. I'll learn Spanish, but I have to get into this language learning school. I need to do all these different things that are outside of my power before I can actually start learning the language. Waiting for someone to teach you Spanish is a great excuse, and it just quietly stops people from actually starting the process of learning. If you take away one thing from this video, it's that there's no special sauce that you need to begin learning Spanish. You can start learning right now by listening to content at a level you understand. And if you're a beginner, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking of that clip I played at the beginning of the video where it was a native speaker speaking Spanish at normal pace. And you're saying, how will I ever be able to understand that at my level? And you're right, you can't. You just won't be able to. That's why we have learner content for people like you who are just getting into learning Spanish. And if you want to find the best learner content for your level of Spanish or any language you want to learn, check out my website, Lengualytics. It's a huge library of comprehensible input content for any level for tons of the most popular languages, including Spanish. I don't just host the content on Lengualytics, I also let you track your content so you can get a visual representation of your comprehension going up every day, every week, every month. You'll also meet a growing community of language learners who can help encourage and support you on this long, long, long journey of learning Spanish or whatever language that you want to learn.
Aprender un idioma es algo personal, lo tienes que hacer tú. Nadie te puede enseñar un idioma, nadie te puede enseñar español, ¿vale? Nadie te puede enseñar español, es algo que cada uno tiene que hacer.